Welcome to yet another episode of Speech Musings with Annette. So I hope you guys must have already seen our previous videos and thank you for all the love and appreciation on that. So today I'll be talking about two important questions. A lot of parents and a lot of caregivers frequently ask speech therapists these questions. Now the first question is, what exactly is the role of a speech therapist in a child's life? Or when does our presence come into a child's life is the first question. The second question is, once therapy starts, then how is the family involved in the therapy? Or how is the caregiver and the relatives and the society involved in the child's therapy and in the child's progress? So these are two questions I will be focusing today on this video. So right now I will be telling you the answer for the first question. So here I'll be talking about first, what is a typically developing child? A typically developing child is a child who has all the development going according to the age appropriate norms. So here in typically developing children, here you can see that they have their physical development going on, they have their social development going on, at the same time they have their speech and language development and their emotional skills. Everything happens simultaneously. But there is a slight difference that can be seen within boys and girls also. So do not confuse at that time when you're searching for the development or when you're taking care of their development. Just see that there might be slight differences between boys and girls. So here usually they say that in boys the physical development is or the motor development is slightly faster than when compared to girls. While in girls you can see that their speech and language development is slightly faster when compared to that of boys. But usually we can say that around the age of 1.5 to 2 years, both of them should come within the same range. That is very important. And when you do not see that, that is when you have to go for an evaluation. Now I'll be giving a brief idea of what exactly are these skills. As I mentioned, social skills, language skills, and your motor skills. So these are some of the main things that we have to take into focus. So all these skills, make sure that you're having a complete check on the child. That is everything happening at the right age? Is everything age appropriate? That is very important. So what exactly is motor skills? Motor skills is where your physical development happens. That is a child's normal physical development from birth to around 1 year of age. That is till when the child starts walking. So in that many things are included. That is they're sitting, then they are walking, then neck support, everything comes under that. And then as the age increases, the child's hand grip, then movement, gross motor movement, fine motor movement, all of this is involved in motor skills. So moving on to social skills that can be seen in a child. So I'll give you some examples for that. Like for example, when a child meets a stranger, how does he give a smile or does he give a hello, a greeting? That is all form of social skills. So that is one form. Or how exactly is he an effective communicator in the environment? Is he a good learner? Okay, how exactly is his relationship with the society? All that comes under social skills. And then finally we have our speech and language skills. So what is speech and language skills? Language skills meaning how exactly is a child, that is from around 6 months of age, the child starts talking. Not exactly in words, but then babbling is when the child starts at 6 months and then it continues till around 2 to 3 years of age. So that is when the maximum language development happens. So understand that from birth to 2 years of age is when the brain has the maximum capacity to take in information, and that is when the child learns the maximum. So you have to keep an eye on whether all of these developments are going in an exact pace. That is the physical development, social development, and the speech and language development. Now, this is about a typically developing child. Now, what happens when you see any kind of a delay, or there are in some cases, in some children, in any of these sections, there can be a delay. That is, either you can see a delay in speech and language, or you can see a slight delay in their physical development. So that is when your therapists come into play. Now, when the child has a development in all of these areas, it is called as a global development delay. So when there is a global development delay, a multidisciplinary approach is what is used for therapy. So in that comes your occupational therapist, your physiotherapist, then you have your psychologist, then you have your speech and language therapist, and also you have your pediatrician. So this is called as a multidisciplinary approach to treatment. So I'll give you an example. For example, the child is having any kind of a physical delay. So where do you go to? You go to a physiotherapist. And an occupational therapist actually also helps in your gross motor development and in your fine motor development. Then we have your psychologist. So psychologist is mostly helping with behavioral issues. And then we have our speech and language therapist. So when do you come to a speech and a language therapist? When you see any kind of a delay in speech or in language is when you come to a speech therapist. Now, I'll be talking about two major areas that we are focusing on as therapists. So the first area is called as the behavioral area, and the second area is exactly speech and language. So behavioral area is handled by two therapists. That is, the first therapist is your psychologist, clinical psychologist comes into play. Second will be speech and language therapist, and we have one more therapist that is called as the ABA therapist. ABA therapist is your applied behavioral analysis therapist. They also help a lot in behavioral therapy. Now moving on to behavioral development in a typically developing child. So what are some of the basic features that you can see in a typically developing child who's having a normal behavior? So a normal behavior means basically what? The child should have very good communication in society. Child should have a good interaction with his family, with the relatives, and as well as with the strangers also. So good sense of social communication is important in behavior. So some basic points of how exactly you identify a child with good behavior is, first thing is they should be an effective communicator. Second, they should have a strong sense of well-being and identity. Third thing, they should have a good relationship with society. And fourth one is that they should have good social interaction also. So this is basically called as a typical behavioral development. Now in some children, what happens is that a lot of deviations can be seen from this behavior, from this typical behavior. Like for example, in case of deviations, you can say that the child keeps harming himself or he tries to harm others who is there in his environment. That is one point. The second thing is that he stays very aloof. That is, he does not want to talk to anyone. He is isolated or he has created a world of his own. So that is one form of a typical behavioral deviation. The third thing is that he might not want to talk to others, or he might not want to engage in group play. So that are some of the behavioral deviations that can be seen. Now you must be thinking, what are some of the disorders that come under behavioral deviations? So I will be giving you about just three main features of behavioral deviations, or three main disorders that come under behavioral deviations. So the first disorder is ADHD. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So what exactly, by the term itself, you must be understanding a little bit about it. So in that, the first thing is attention deficit. That is, the child is not able to concentrate on any activity that is given. So a normal child, usually if you give them an activity, they will sit at least for around 1 minute. So even though the child is a little hyperactive also, the child might sit for around 1 minute if that activity is of interest. But in a ADHD child, that child is not able to sit for that particular task even for 1 minute properly. So that is called as an attention deficit. They do not have concentration, they lack attention, and also they are very hyperactive. So that is one disorder which comes under this one. The second one is ASD. ASD is autism spectrum disorder. So what is the meaning of spectrum? Spectrum means there is a whole lot of symptoms which come under that. So there are but typical features also, but still there are a lot of symptoms. So people that come over here, especially my autism clients, you can see that one autism child is very different from the other child. And that is the reason why that spectrum word has come there. Because spectrum itself means a lot of symptoms is involved. So maybe some symptoms that you see in one autistic child is not the same for the other autistic child. But still you can say that there are some typical features. I'll be mentioning the typical features here. So the first thing is that they do not like interacting with people. Okay, they try creating a world of their own. They always isolate themselves. Okay, a typical child would love to play with their peers, would love to play with their friends. But in this case, the child might not play. Okay, he would create a world of his own. He wants to play only with himself, with his own toys. He has certain interest and he does not go about that. And also, they have a lot of social isolation. That is, they do not want to talk with the others, with strangers or with other friends. So they have like a few people they are comfortable with, and they'll talk only to those people. So that can be their caregivers or their parents or whatever, their siblings. So that is about autism spectrum disorder. And also in some cases you can see that they have a lot of self-harm behaviors like biting or injuring others. All that will come under this. And then we have one more, that is the learning disorders. So in learning disorders, there is actually a whole list that comes under that, but I can just summarize and tell you few things. So in that comes your reading and your writing disorders. So usually when a child goes to school, the teacher might be telling that, the child is not able to write properly, or the child is not able to read properly, and they may label it as, she is very naughty or he is very naughty, but that is not the case. They might actually be having some kind of a learning disorder, and those actually have names too. So if they have a reading disorder, that is called as dyslexia. If they have a writing disorder, that is called as dysgraphia. So all these topics I can talk in the future in a detailed conversation if possible. So yes, so that is called as dyslexia and dysgraphia. So dysgraphia means they are not able to write properly. For example, one example I can give you is that the mirror letters, like for example, similar looking letters, they'll keep exchanging. Like instead of B, they write D. Instead of D, they write B. That comes under dysgraphia. And in dyslexia, they are not able to read. Like for example, they might be, one example I can give you is apple. So they might read it as APPLE, but they are not able to combine it and say it as apple. So that concept is not there for them. So there are different variations of this disorder is there, but I'm just telling you in basic form here. So these are all the different kind of behavioral deviations that you can see. So I hope you guys understood about a brief description about what is behavioral development and what are the behavioral deviations that can be seen. So once again, I'm telling you, keep a check on all of this, and if you see any kind of a delay, then please go for a speech therapist evaluation. In the case of behavioral, as I mentioned before, you have to take a psychologist referral, you also have to take an ABA therapist referral, and then finally come to a speech and language therapist. So all three of us can help you in getting a better behavioral therapy. So moving on to the next one, that is speech and language development. So as I mentioned before, we had two different areas. First one was behavioral, second one was speech and language development. Now, speech and language development is your normal language development, that is from around 6 months of age to it keeps increasing. Okay, so we start from 6 months of age. So in 6 months of age, the basic pattern of language development for a child is that it is called as babbling. So babbling meaning they start using sounds. They start using sounds like, for example, ba ba ba. That's one example. Okay, so that's called as babbling. So that is when at around 6 months of age it starts. And then comes to around 11 months. So 11 months is where they try to imitate new sounds which happens in the environment. So that is when you keep giving them those environmental sounds and all that, they try repeating that. So that is around 11 months of age. And then comes to around 1 year of age is where their first word starts appearing. So in a typically normally developing child, their first word appears at 1 year of age. And also please remember that the first word that they utter might not be meaningful. Like for example, most of the children, they start their first word with mother or amma in our language. So it is not necessary that the child looks at the mother and says amma, but still their first word is amma, and that is very important. So that is about 1 year of age. And then after that, there is a very high growth spurt in their language development. That is, their vocabulary or their understanding of certain words increases. So you can say by around 1 to 1.5 years, they have a vocabulary of 100 to 150 words in their understanding. It is not necessary that they have to express it out, but they understand it. That is, they understand the concept. So you must be thinking, what is vocabulary? So vocabulary means the concept of a particular word. Like for example, if I say apple, immediately there is a picture that comes in your brain of what does an apple look like. An apple is, it has a particular shape, it is red in color. So that connection is called as vocabulary. So once that vocabulary is there in a child's mind, that is the basis for later language development. So around, that's what I said, around 1 to 1.5 years, they have a very good vocabulary at around 100 to 150 words. And then based on that, they keep combining words and then they start making sentences. So if I talk from a pyramid point of view, you can say first we start with certain sounds, then they have an understanding of certain words, that is, they have a very good vocabulary, and slowly they start combining with 1 word to 2 words in a sentence, and then they create phrases and then sentences. So that's how the language development goes. Now, in any point in this development, you can see that there might be a delay. So usually you can start seeing that by around 1 year or 1.5 years. So you can see that the child has not yet said their first word, or the child is not trying to combine two words in a sentence by around that age. Like for example, a 1.5-year-old child might say, I want. So, or baby wants. So that is one example. So the child is not saying that. So that is when you should be concerned. Okay, and that is when you go to a speech therapist for evaluation. So if you have a doubt about whether the child is not speaking properly, or he's not having an understanding capability, or if he's not having any kind of behavioral interaction, so that is when you go to a speech therapist. So there is a whole chart for speech and language development also. If you guys need it, I can show it in the upcoming videos. We can have a detailed video session on speech and language development, behavioral development, and all the like. Okay. So I hope you guys understood about what exactly is the role of a speech therapist and when do you have to go for an evaluation. Okay, I can just summarize and give it to you guys. So first we talked about what is global development delay, how are the therapists all involved in that, and in that we talked about behavioral issues, we talked about speech language development, because that is our area. We focus on two main areas, once again, behavioral issues, and second one is speech and language development. Okay, so we talked about the different disorders that come under behavioral issues, and also we talked about the deviations, what happens, what are the disorders. Similarly, we talked about speech and language development, what is the typical development in a child that you can see, and then if there is any kind of a delay, how exactly is it affecting. So this is what we talked about in the first question. This is the answer to the first question. So whenever you go to a rehabilitation center, make sure before you start the referral for a speech therapist, the first doctor that you have to go to is a clinical psychologist. Go to a clinical psychologist to get a proper referral, and then from there, if needed, you can go to an ABA therapist, you can go to the clinical psychologist for behavioral therapy, and also after that you can come for a speech and hearing evaluation. Okay, so moving on to the next question, that is, what is the role of the family or the caregiver in the speech therapy sessions? So once a speech therapy is initiated, we, at least for a few weeks of sessions, we allow the parents to come into the sessions. Now, what is the main reason for that is that a lot of our techniques will be demonstrated to the parents, and that exactly has to be done at home. Now, giving an example, what I do for my clients is that when I start with my therapy sessions, I make sure the parents are there at least for 4 to 5 sessions in a week. So only for that 1 week, once the parent is there and once the parent is well versed in what are the techniques that we're using here, the same thing will be encouraged to use at home also. So when you're seeing a child's typical day, you can see that the child might be here, might be there with the therapist only for around 45 minutes to around 1 hour. The rest of the time the child is with their parents. So the parents are actually their role models or their teachers. So whatever we model over here in our therapy sessions, if the same thing is followed at home also, and around like 3 to 4 practice sessions at home are done, then there'll be a very great improvement for the child. So I have seen, personally, I've seen so many clients whose parents are very dedicated and they have a lot of awareness about speech therapy. So what they do is that whatever I do in my sessions, they go and practice that at home, and they do it for around like 3 to 4 times in a day, and that is what gives the child a whole lot of improvement. And so therefore you can see that after around a few months, there is a very drastic improvement in the child's speech and language therapy. Speech and language development. So here you can say that the complete credit goes to the parents and not to the therapist. Yes, we are actually only helping them, or we are just modeling them. So those things has to be done by the parent, and the parent has a very great role in that. So parents, make sure that whenever you're going for therapy, whenever you're going for the therapy with the child, please understand everything that is happening in the therapy sessions, and make sure that you give the time to your child to be at home, practice with them, do all the language stimulation techniques that the therapist is teaching you, and definitely there'll be a whole lot of improvement. So that is one thing that has to be done. The second thing is that we are going to talk about the environment that the child is there. So talking about environment, we can say that in a family, there might be many members. Like for example, you have your relatives, you have your close family members. There are a lot of people involved in the family. So I have seen a lot of people who give negative reinforcements, who keep teasing the child, who keep giving them labels. So when that kind of a person is there in the family, then there is a complete drastic change in the child's emotional and mental well-being, and that also affects the parent, because the parent also has to get continuous encouragement, continuous appreciation for every small thing that is done for the child. So make sure that whenever a parent and a child is there in the family who's having therapy, then the rest of the family members have to give them continuous encouragement, continuous positive reinforcement. There should be no kind of negative reinforcements, no teasing, no labeling. There are some children, like for example, if you see an autistic kid, there might be some people who are not aware of this condition, and they might ask, is this child, what is wrong with this child? There is something wrong with the child. So if you keep teasing and if you keep telling these, provoking the parents, then their complete will and strength will go off, and that will indirectly affect the child also. So as a parent is completely involved in the child's life, make sure that that caregiver is given complete encouragement and appreciation for whatever she is doing, and make sure that any kind of these people are being avoided from the environment. So that is the second thing. So first we talked about how exactly the parent should be involved in the therapy sessions. Second thing is about the environment that the child is in. Now the third thing is that we talk about how exactly the child should be involved in everyday activities in the home setting. So like for example, the child might be having siblings, that is like two other children in the house. So the two other children are typically normal children, so they are involved in every housework, in every activity that is happening at home. But this child is being completely isolated by the family members. So what happens to the child's mental well-being? That is being affected drastically. So make sure that does not happen. Okay, make sure that parents have to involve their special child in every activity that is there in the house. Give a lot of involvement for the child, because you should be very inclusive of their education, inclusive of every activity that they do at home, and make sure that you give your complete time and attention to that child. Okay, and do not give any kind of a comparison between the children. Do not give any kind of comparison between siblings. That is also very important. So what happens in that way is that that child will feel, okay, I'm being included in everything. Okay, I'm like a normal child. I don't have any kind of a problem. That is our main goal as a therapist. So we should make them one of us. That is our caption also. Make them one of us. That is very important. So you make sure that that child is included in each and every activity in home. Let them feel, make them feel that they are wanted, that they are capable of doing everything, and also they are very inclusive. They should be very inclusive of everything. So even when they go to school, further in school also, try giving them inclusive education. Try making them go to a normal school. But for all of that, a very good therapy is required before that, or a very good rehabilitation session is required before that. And if a child improves with all of these conditions, then we can say that the parent can get the major credit for that. That is a very known fact. The parent gets a major credit for that, because the parent is giving unlimited time to the child, for the rehabilitation of the child, for the progress of the child. So if all of these points that I said right now is taken into consideration, and you as parents or you as caregivers take care of the child in this way, then I'm very sure that there will be a very drastic improvement in the overall mental health and social speech and language well-being of the child. So that is what I want to talk about in the second question. So I hope I answered your questions for these two topics. So if any kinds of questions you have in future, you can drop it in the comment box, or you can mail to my mail ID. I hope you guys found this small session informative and very useful. So please share it to maximum number of people that it might be helpful for. And if you have any topics that you want me to talk about, please drop in the comments below, or you can drop into my mail ID also. So if you like it, please give it a big thumbs up, and please comment on my videos, and please subscribe to my channel. And just next to that you can see a bell icon, so if you press that you can get notified about new videos. So see you in the next session. Take care and bye bye.